Check one, two, check one, two, check one, two. Can you guys hear me okay? I hope you can. Let me make sure. Check one, two, check one, two, check one, two. Okay, sounds like I got some volume. We're working. So, welcome, guys. I know that we are a little bit behind schedule, but we are here and I'm excited. I'm sitting next to, well, not really sitting next to, but y'all know technology is a beautiful thing. My guy, the man, the myth, the legend. I've known this brother since he was probably about, 5, 6 years old. I've known.
Yep.
A long time. And I'm really excited to have him on the show again. As y'all know, if you guys have been following me since the very beginning of this whole ordeal, we've actually had a conversation once before, but there was a lot of technical difficulties. Your boy was still kind of figuring out this whole, YouTube and, the whole app situation. But we have upgraded. We're doing a lot better. And so I knew I had to sit down and have this conversation with Dr. John Push Gaines. How you doing, man? How's everything going with you?
Good, man. Everything's good. It's been a busy season. We're excited, man. My family and I just for the end of the year. Looking forward to next year. But yeah, everything's been good, man. We're blessed, man. God has been good through the highs and through the lows, for sure.
Absolutely. And we all know, me and you, we both know there's been a lot of highs in our lives, in our journeys, and there's been some lows that surprising lows as well. But we are still here. We are pushing, and we're thankful to have you, man, here for this conversation. But before we get into it, just want to do a quick shout out to my sponsors. Shout out to iShotya.com. Thank you so much for continuing to support Marvin Patterson. If anybody's locally in the area looking for some good pictures, that guy will get you done quick, fast, and in a hurry. All you got to do is let him know I sent you. iShotya.com. Next, we're going to go ahead and hit Icon ENT. My guy, Willie Jr. Thomas. If anybody's looking for the whole bus, party bus get up, if you guys are trying to go to some kind of New Year's Eve event that's coming up, there's a lot of them in town that's going down. Make sure you guys hit up Junior Thomas. He has the bus thing on lock. He's doing it major. He just got 2 new buses that he's putting together, and he's paying a great price for them. So if you guys need a ride in style, hit up Willie Junior Thomas at Icon ENT. Last but not least, the Chayah movement. Thank you so much, Zakiya, for continuing to be a part of the family. She has supported me from day one, and I appreciate everything that she is doing with the Chayah. If you guys have not checked out the Chayah movement, go to thechayahmovement.com and see some of the amazing things that she's doing and the creations that she is putting together in her nonprofit. So thank you all so much for continuing to support. But we're here to talk with my guy, Mr. John. Doctor, I should say, Doc John. How you been, man? Like, really, I know it's been a busy year for you, man. Like, there's been a lot of things that you've been kind of into, and I actually was, kind of scrolling through your pics and some of the information that you have been posting. And tell us a little bit about the 30 Days of Purpose. I seen that you guys had an event was that a few days ago? You guys had an event or something?
Yeah, man. It's an interactive journal that I wrote in 2017. Mm-hmm. So I was taking care of my father, who was, dying of lung cancer. And it was at a time in my life where I was working on my dissertation for my doctorate. That was the year 2017 was my most successful year. Like, I started speaking in 2012, 2011, and 2017 was like my most productive and successful year of my journey up until that point, speaking wise. Nice. Was also, planning a wedding, got married that year.
Congratulations to that.
Yeah, thank you. And it was the first, we're going through a process of like flipping the first house that I flipped. It was a lot of stuff, that was happening, man. And I'm probably missing a lot. I quit my job in corporate America that year. It was crazy. It was a crazy year. But God was with me in the midst. There's a parable in scripture where it talks about Jesus in the boat with his disciples, and the disciples they begin to panic and freak out when the storm was happening, and and when Jesus woke up, they said the scripture says that Jesus was sleeping on the boat, and when Jesus woke up, he's like, "Why are you guys tripping? Like, what's going on?" And the
Yeah.
disciples are like, "There's a storm, there's a storm." And I love that passage because the disciples they forgot that Jesus was in the boat with them, that
Yeah.
he was next to them, calm in the midst of the storm. And it says he woke up, he rebuked the storm, he calmed the storm. And so anyway, man, I share all that to say 2017, the reason why this journal came about, for a minute in 2017, for a bit, I forgot that Jesus was in the boat with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
My mother passed away when I was 7. So when I rekindled that relationship with my father and having my father, man, I was devastated. I'm like, man,
Right.
I felt like it was cut short. I finally was able to have a relationship with one of my parents, and I just felt like it was cut short. It was a hard season, and then in addition to all the other things that I was doing and trying to navigate was extremely difficult. And so anyway, man, I started writing, and people ask me all the time, like, you have a dissertation, you're an author. I don't like writing at all,
Really.
but I knew it was of the Lord, and so
Yeah.
for me, man, I started writing and journaling, and so finally this year, I felt like it was something that I wanted to share with the world, and so I completed it last year, released it this year, and the support has been amazing because I think a lot of people can relate. I think we live in a world where everyone has to put on like this "I have it all together" coat. Um,
Right.
I think the journal just connects with folks, letting people know, like, hey, chaos and storms and hard days happen.
Yeah.
But that doesn't negate you from living out your purpose. Like, you still have to take steps in the midst of it, right? And some people, they never really understand what that means. They don't even know what it means to take a step. They don't want to go on. And I wanted to connect with the real ones, the ones that know that life is hard, but their purpose is greater than the hardships that they might be experiencing right now. And that's why I want to release a journal. And that's why I feel like a lot of people connected with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell. That's
Absolutely.
I guess that is a long version story of why the journal, but it's an important
No,
story.
absolutely. I mean, it's important to share it. And to me, I think short version, long version, the version that you give is the version that needed to be said. It's like you
Yeah,
said, sometimes you get to speaking, and sometimes it's just not you. Sometimes that's God speaking through you. You know what I'm saying? We
yeah,
sometimes forget, like He
yeah,
has it already. Everything's already been put to place. You know what I'm saying? We just have to guide through it and see the signs and follow the signs as they come. And so, absolutely, I appreciate you for sharing that. I think there's some things that you touched on that I was planning on touching on
yeah,
already, and it was about just us venturing back a little bit because in our first interview. I wanted to share and talk a little bit about your upbringing for those that didn't necessarily learn back then or haven't followed you and got the 411 on who you are as an individual. I talk to people all over the world when I do this. And so I want to get your story out because I think you're an amazing asset, amazing pillar to our community and to the community surrounding. You're obviously doing some major work, and I applaud you, especially from where you came from to where you are now. And so let's
sure.
take it back a little bit. Is that okay with you if we take it back a little bit?
Of course. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so I met you. You was probably about 5, 6 years old. I used to hang out with this guy. One of my good buddies. His name is Jonte Frazier. Shout out to him. He didn't pass on. That's our dude. He actually passed away. Was it last year? It was this year, right?
yep, yep,
Like crazy. But Jonte was one of my best friends,
yeah,
as you know. I was going through a lot of hardships at my house. With a father that was abusive and a mother that didn't know how to to deal with the situation and
Yeah.
separate herself from it. And so we dealt with a lot of hardships coming up. And the one thing about John Tay, I met John Tay playing basketball at Al Davies Boys and Girls Club, and the one thing that he was always open to people coming to the house. And so John Tay was always there for me and always opened his door to me staying with him. And as I stayed with him, I learned about, James, obviously, Grandma, Danielle,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
Jazz, Onisha,
Yep.
and you, brother. Like the young type. And the one thing that I'll never forget about John, I say this every time we talk because I just remember it like it was yesterday. You on A Street walking with no shirt on, with some brown shorts, little snotty nose, but he was a cool cat. You know what I'm saying? Everybody loved John. He was a cool cat. But, you could always tell there was something about John. You could
Yeah.
always tell. Tell us about those days back then, man, and how it was walking through A Street as a young.
A lot of people, man, I share. I think, I've dedicated my life to sharing stories. I'm working on a book right now. I have curriculum. I mean, it's what I do. I think our stories are powerful, and so anytime I have an opportunity to share my story, it's something that I don't, hold lightly. I joke with my wife all the time. I am like, this next summer, I want to get back to like no shirt, right? So I got about 35 more pounds. I gotta.
Hey, bro. Hey, it's all there though. You got to just set them goals and go for it. You know about that.
Yeah, I'm optimistic, man. But yeah, man. So 8th Street, man. It's kind of like, I think it's hard to describe to people that didn't really grow up in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember, man, after my mother passed away, there were so many of us. I mean, those were like the people that you named. They were like the main folks that lived upstairs. Like, my grandmother owned this duplex on 8th and Cushman, and she lived downstairs. No one can go downstairs. And then all her grandkids, we weren't even her kids. She just raised her grandkids, right? And her great grandkids, and we all lived upstairs. And then there was random like grandkids that would pop in, live there for 3 months, and there's only 2 bedrooms. And so, I loved it though, man. I think, and that was the time. You remember 8th Street, man? There were so many, like, when you 8th Street, there were so many just, Crips up and down 8th Street.
Trouble.
All love though, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. It wasn't like, I mean, to the community, to us, I mean, people could write about it and say whatever. I mean, people did what they had to do. But like, for me, when people are like, oh, I'm like, bro, it was like, I was Lil John to everyone. It was all, I could ask anyone for, like, I need $1. Let me, it was
always $1.
It was always love, man. And it was community. And my brother made a point. I recently, we were able to get one of the houses that we grew up in. And my brother, I called one of my brothers, and he was like, man, it's crazy. Like, the Hilltop, he's like, you kind of you don't feel like the energy, right, anymore. Like, when you're driving kind of through it, you don't feel that same energy. But yeah, man, we grew up right in it, with the drugs and the violence, all of it, man. And just, I'm grateful to have been the youngest, to learn from my siblings and my cousins like John Tay, who were like siblings to me, man. John Tay, bro, he taught me so much about the streets. Like, he would just tell me, like, get in the car, and we would like ride around, man, all night doing what he did. You know what I'm saying? And he would share, like what you shared, he will always say things like, man, there's so much more. Like, you can, you're going to change the world. Like, anything he could do to support me, from, buying football equipment, I could always call on him, man. And he gave me so much game, right? Teach me how to hustle, like, in the right way. and it changed the trajectory of my life, man. And so growing up in it and seeing it all firsthand, and then every day having to make that decision, like which way do I go, right? So for me, man, it was like I want to stand outside of the box.
Right.
I want to, and I was okay with being different, and being different wasn't always popular, right? Because all my guys and
Right.
even the young guys, they wanted to follow in the footsteps. I remember, man, I'll never forget. Uh, I I got invited to one of the OGs,
Mhm.
one of his
Yeah.
house, right? And he was like, "I want you to cut the grass," and so cut the grass, and then he's like, "Hey, just chilling." All the young guys that I would see that weren't like on the gang yet, right? All got
Mhm.
invited there, and all the OGs show up, probably like 30, 35 OGs in the backyard, and they start putting them on the set, like on Hilltop Crib.
Yeah.
And and I was kind of standing there like, yo, this is crazy. Like, how do I leave? I
Right.
was like 10. Because
Mhm.
first he was like, here, cut the grass. He gave me like $40. But
Yeah.
really, he really was like, he was like, here's the opportunity. Great, man. I had a relatives that lived next door, T-Boy, and,
Okay.
and my people lived next
Yeah.
door.
Terrence.
Terrence, man, was he saw me from the back, and he said, "John, get your little up here." Like, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, there's always, man, like moments like that were happening on a
Right.
daily, where there just were like decisions. Sometimes I was in my young age was wise enough to make the right decision. Sometimes I didn't know, like OG invite me to his house and I'm cut the grass. I'm like, money. I didn't really, it went over my head. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
Sometimes I didn't know, but I just, man, if just the grace of God, but I'm grateful for it all, man.
Right.
And, uh, and I think for me, the reason why I share my story is because a lot of people aren't comfortable sharing their stories. They want to hide who they really are. This is who I am, and
Right.
I'm gonna share my story until I can't speak anymore. And God has
Absolutely.
just created a platform to do it, and that's why my mother, who I love so much, so it wasn't just happening around us; it was also happening in our homes, man. And so my mother, used drugs. Aunties drinking. I mean, my first auntie overdose. I remember I was 4 years old. Another auntie passed away when I was 5.
Mhm.
Just drunk
Okay.
herself to death.
Right.
Um, my mom, and then Jonte's mom
Yeah.
OD'd in a garage. So, man, it hit our family tough. It hit a lot
Right.
of families tough, bro. And so for me, like growing up with like drugs in my system and some of the things that I had to experience as a kid, things
Mhm.
that just weren't that I thought were normal at the time, but as I became a man and more mature, I realized, yo, that wasn't normal. But I share a lot of that because a lot of people don't know how to connect it to. I think you talk through like data and stats, and especially when I talk to like educators, when I talk to people,
Yeah.
there's that's called ACEs, right?
Mhm.
Adverse childhood experiences. And I want to encourage any of your listeners that um, are connected to speaking or intrigued by story. I would encourage them. Is that T-Boy in there?
Oh, T-boy right there. What's
Man, that's
going
my.
on, T?
I love Terrence so much, man. I'm so grateful for. I'm telling you, man. When I tell you, like from like my older siblings and my cousins, like
Yeah.
seeing them, like have success, have failures. It taught me so much, man. And I didn't have to. And it allowed me to choose, man. And I'm so grateful for all my OGs. They just were, man. They were the ones that laid the path for me. Like, here's what you can
Absolutely.
do. Here's what you don't have to do, and they provided a platform so I didn't have to do some of those things, man. Just grateful for that. But just going back to ACEs, man, adverse childhood experiences. There's a book from a black psychologist, professor at Stanford. She wrote this book called The Deepest Well. It's
Mhm.
an incredible book, but it goes into this ACE test, and it's essentially if 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 one of your parents passed away before the age of 18,
Mhm.
if if you were abused before the age of 18, if you saw a fight, if you saw frequent fighting before the age of 18, if one of your parents used drugs and you witnessed it before the age of 18,
Mhm.
So they range it on a scale. Now it's on a scale from 1 to 13, but
Right.
before it was on a scale from 1 to 10. And so, man, I took that ACE test, and I'm a 13 out of 13.
Mhm.
Answered yes to every single question. And they say, and just to give you a, so when I served on the board at the rescue mission, and they had us take this test, because then they talk about homelessness, and they said,
Yeah.
if you score at least a 4 on this ACE test, you're more likely to end up homeless. If you score
Mm.
like a 4 or 5, you're more likely to end up in prison. You score like a 4 or 5 out of 10, 13, you're more likely to end up obese. If you score a 4 or 5, this is just a 4 or 5, right? You're more
Yeah.
likely with illness. I saw my guy Brandon Irvin too,
Yeah.
delayed.
Shout out to
But
Brandon, man.
yeah, that man is you talk about a leader's leader, man. That dude he's one of those cats that is always behind the scenes but
Yeah.
pushing. We have a few of those in Tacoma, and he don't get enough credit, but he's
Yeah.
always behind the scenes,
Good
giving the
guy.
blue, pulling the strings. He's a solid brother, man.
Absolutely.
So for me, when I scored that, I answer every question yes. I remember, man, just kind of crying like, yo, this is God, right? Just if it were not for the grace of God. So we talk about like story. It wasn't just like, hey, this is something I'm talking about. Now it's like, okay, the statistics say I should have ended up with mental illness. I should have ended up in prison. I should all these
Yeah.
different things that the stats say based on this ACE score. And that's just the reality of the hill. And when I go to different cities and share like bits and pieces of my story, I'm like, it wasn't the reason why I didn't really give a lot of attention to my story, because it wasn't just me. It was a lot of people in my family. It was so many people in the neighborhood. David, like we all had similar stories. So for
Yeah.
us, it's like this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it was like we got to fight through it. We don't have time to make excuses as to why we didn't know any different. Like this was our world, this was our community, this was
Yeah.
our life. And it wasn't until I got older, like, yo, that wasn't normal. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And there's power in it, but now I can share, and with people who have, everyone has a story, but people who go through adversity and hardships, and now I feel like I have a voice to speak to some of those people. So
So you said a lot.
a lot.
And I there's a couple key points that I wanted to touch on. Um, First off, mental illness. How did you? Because obviously, I know your story. I know your story. The things that you went through, the amount of death that you went through, the gang violence, all of the stress of dealing with a learning disability. Even at that, we're going to touch on that too, by the way. But how did you find yourself able to deal with not going mentally crazy with all of these things that are kind of falling in, like putting you into this box of, you know negativity? It was like, but it's our lives, you know what I'm saying? Because for me,
Yeah,
like, I have three other brothers and we all went through it together, and all of us have our own stories. I'm the one that decided to take this route, and all the rest of them have their routes. How did you end up what was it that catapulted you into your route, and how
yeah,
you?
yeah. I think I mean there's a stigma on mental health, as we all know this, and it's become more popular to talk about it now. But growing up, it was something like go to church, pray through it, right? It wasn't something you really talked about. And so for me, you weren't allowed to really um you could have like emotion, but a lot of it we're a people that show emotion, but there's
Mm,
certain emotions that I wasn't comfortable showing in front of, especially like family. Like you just have to be a certain kind of way because you never
yeah.
saw them cry, right? I
Nope.
remember
Nope.
being at funerals and stuff, like you just saw people just like, yo, like this is happening, but I'm gonna, we're gonna get through it. And like strength strength is like how I used to define strength is different than how I define strength now.
Mhm.
Strength when I was growing up was like not asking for help, trying to carry it by myself. Now
Mhm.
strength looks like asking for help, realizing that I don't have to carry it by myself. And so just being like completely honest, man, by the time I was 18, I was so depressed. And now, mind you, like 18-year-old me, I'm wearing this Bellarmine. I'm a board member at Bellarmine Prep, prestigious high school. I was captain of the football team,
Okay.
captain of the basketball team, captain of the track team, successful student athlete, but never really fit in or felt like I fit in at that institution because
Yeah.
no one really knew my story, wasn't comfortable sharing my story. And I think just years of sweeping things under the rug and not sharing my story, uh,
Yeah.
I can say now, looking back, it caused severe depression, man, where I started having like suicidal ideation.
Mm.
Um, there was a moment where I tried to, take my own life, man. 18 years old, right before graduation, and this was a kid that was going to college for sports. You
Yeah.
know, uh, had 9 varsity letters. I mean,
Wow.
successful in the
Yeah.
world's eyes, but internally I was hurting. And so you asked the question about like mental health. It's because I never talked to anyone about my story. Like my brothers, it wasn't until I do feel like I'm the glue of my family. It wasn't until I became like an advocate for mental health later in my life, in my adulthood, where I set them down and just start asking them about, because I never heard them talk about stuff. And they're,
Right.
my brothers. They're
I
so
knew you, bro.
men, you know what I'm saying? And
They're hard.
I heard, I still don't think until there's, I probably seen one of my brothers cry once like my whole life, right? Those just
Right.
kind of and just good husbands, good fathers, right? Just a
Yeah.
different generation. So for me, it was like just trying to navigate it. And then when I got to that point when I was 18, I'll never forget. My brother was like, "Man, why didn't you say anything? Like, you could always talk to me." Both of them, just was like, "Yo, you could always talk to us." And I realized I had so much support. But even then, I never went through therapy. um just really just man just I think a lot of it was faith, but it wasn't until, just being real, David, man, until I just like 4 years ago I went through therapy for the first time. And it wasn't like, hey, I'm depressed. Like, depression no longer exists, but
Right.
I didn't feel like it was appropriate for me to talk to young people about tools and resources if I didn't go through and navigate some of those things myself. Because people ask,
Yeah, that's true.
"Man, you went through this, you went through that, like you witnessed, I mean, some stuff I still don't even talk about, right? You saw
Right.
what? You never went through therapy, and I know like some people don't have a faith, right? But I do think there's practical tools in this world and resources that we can point young people to outside of like the church or outside of faith. For me, it just happened to be a lot of faith. And so when I was like 4 years ago, I wanted to be more proactive and was like, man, I want to go through therapy for myself just to be proactive. And then the
Right.
pandemic hit, and like it wasn't depression, but it was like, I think of what a lot of people experience, like, yo, I'm just kind of sitting, like what's going on. And I was able
Yeah.
to sit in my thoughts, and I realized that I never had healing even from the death of my father.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
I was upset, I was angry. I'm like, man, I only had 5 years with him. Like, this is, I got the rest of my life. His only thing, he used to tell me all the time, I can't wait for you to be a father. Like, I can't
Yeah.
wait to hold you. So I was just upset. I was upset with it all, man. So I went through therapy, and so even tying it all together, going back to the journal, like the journal was a big thing for me to help me just like kind of get through that season. As we talk about mental health, and just journaling was huge for me. And it wasn't until I went to therapy for the first time, the pandemic hit, and I'm like, yo, it's time for me to release this journal. And so now,
Yeah.
man, I've had a therapist every year since then. And it's
Wow.
just like, just conversation. And it's always like you want to have, as if you're building a home, you always want
Mhm.
to have that strong foundation when the storm comes. Because the one
Right.
thing that we know, hard days will come again.
Absolutely.
What's going to
Absolutely.
trigger that little boy that found his mother dead? You know what I'm saying? What's
Right.
going to trigger that little boy that used to hear the gunshots? Like, what storm is it going to be? I don't want to know. Like, I'm gonna be proactive in my journey. And then I think having a daughter was special to me because I know how much, like, she rarely remembers what I say,
Mhm.
but she emulates what I do. She follows my actions. Then having a son, a young black son, I'm like, yo, I have to do this for my kids. Like, they have to see, Like it's okay to go to therapy. It's okay to talk about your emotions. And so for me, like I'm really stepping outside of my comfort zone, just trying to be a great example for them in this season. So when I think about mental health, it's definitely it's with each season in life, and as I grow and change as a man, it changes for me, like how I view mental health, how deep I want to go into mental health, what I'm reading, who I'm talking to, trying to get around folks. Even I think about our interview 3 years ago, right? Was it what 3 years ago when we tried to do it?
2 years.
2 years
Yeah,
ago.
I've only been doing it 2 years, but
Yeah.
pretty
Okay.
close.
I
Yeah.
think I won the first one, so it feels like 3 years.
Yeah. He was like, I think the third one.
Yeah. So I think even so, 2 years ago, I think my conversation was different than it was now. I wasn't talking
Yeah.
about mental health, or you know what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
just changed as I mature and grow as a man.
Absolutely. I see. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up because you had posted something about it, and I really thought it was important. I've seen a lot, just like you said before, a lot of us people, um, brothers, men don't necessarily want to talk about that kind of thing, and so it's nice. This year I've seen a lot of people that I know in the community that are talking more about mental health. My good friend Kai Steplight he lives in Olympia, talking about mental health, some of the things that he had been dealing with growing up. There's a couple other people that I know of top that was speaking on it as well. And then I seen your portion, and I was like, well, I really want to ask him just to get his thoughts
Yeah, for
on
sure.
mental health and how important it is for us to talk about it instead of allowing it to build inside us and just not release it. So
Yeah.
I mean, great point, great point there. So I wanted you to share a little bit about growing up and finding out that you had a learning, um, what would you call it? A little
Yeah.
nudge in learning.
Yeah, man. I mean, I found that out because people will clown you when you're young.
Yeah,
I was always, but I was always like, one thing I learned from my family, especially my grandma, like I was always confident. So it wasn't like I was timid. I knew there was things like I just would pronounce things differently. My
yeah,
father stuttered like terribly. So a lot of
right,
it, some of it, it wasn't necessarily like the drugs in the system. It was more, I think some of it was genetics. But I remember being in like speech classes, learning resource classes, when I was a kid. Uh, but for me, it wasn't until my mother passed away. I think I was like 8 years old, and my brother, I think he was still in college. He was finishing his last year, and he was fighting for custody of me. But I was living upstairs at my grandmother's house,
right.
and I wasn't doing any homework. Right? Maybe I was like 9 or something. And he came home one weekend and was like, "Yo, like the school called, says you're not turning any homework." He's like, "Let's sit down, let's crush this." I was like, "Okay, cool." We sit down, and it was like I forget the assignment, the simplest assignment. And
Hmm.
he was like, "Come on, bro, like, like let's do it." He's like,
Yeah,
like, and I remember I start crying. He's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Bro, I can't." I was like, "I can't read." Like, he was like, "What?" Like, he's like, "Man, like, we got to figure this out, man." So two summers, for the next 2 summers, man, we would read Dr. Seuss books when he was like home in the summers, bro. We would read Dr. Seuss books, and just reading out loud helped more than I knew it would help, right? And then when I outgrew that, he found like tutoring services for me. When I was in 5th grade, I shared a story about this woman named Miss Irene, who
yeah,
just was an incredible woman, man. If I posted some videos of it, I'll try to find a video so you can share if
yeah, for
folks want to
sure,
see
for sure.
that video. But Miss Irene, she was there's a little church on 6 and Ainsworth.
Yep.
She still attends the church, but she would have a tutoring service there. It was connected to Bryant Elementary School. And
Yeah.
man, so just finding like resources like that helped a ton. But even, man, I remember getting to high school, I thought, I have it all together. In that Bellarmine, bro, it's like you reading like 3 books in the summer,
Yeah.
get to the school year, and then you testing like the first day on those books, and then you're reading out loud. I'm like, man, this is even at Bellarmine. I'm like, I tried to avoid it, right? Reading out
Yeah.
loud. And so for me, it's like it was I had to put in so much extra work just to understand and read and write. And I'm so grateful, man, to God. Like for me, I share like with my kids. My kids are brilliant. A lot of people don't know. It's my wife. She almost scored a perfect on the SATs.
Wow.
So she's intelligent. And people ask me all the time, like, your kids are like you. I'm like, no, 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 no. I work extremely hard. And that's how I was able to like get through and get the
Yeah.
doctorate. My wife is like, she's just naturally, those folks that are just kind
She's
of,
just intelligent.
is
She just got that
intelligent.
intelligence.
And so for me, it was like I just had to work extremely hard. Now I think, man, reading is so critical. I have a goal next year. I want to read 50 books. And and so for me, man, just reading and trying to understand podcasts. And so things that I did as a kid, it went from like Dr. Seuss books. It went
Mhm.
from listening to, the barbershop, bruh. Like
Yeah.
I'm thinking like some of the things it wasn't as in some of the things it wasn't intentional. They just kind of happened organically, changed the
Mhm.
trajectory of my life. I had a job at the barbershop when I was 10 years old. And that was like a podcast, like going
Yeah.
to a podcast
It
every
was.
single right? Man,
Yeah.
so Yusuf, my guy H, who's still
Yeah.
doing a lot of
Shout
community
out to
stuff,
H. Yeah.
right? But then a lot of these cats who like I'm still really close with, like kind of got their upbringing like Up Church,
Yep.
Big Jess. Like a lot of these cats who are cutting hair now have their own barbershops, kind of
Yeah.
got their start footing, under Yusuf, right? But I
Yeah.
remember man sleeping in the shop because Yusuf just saw this little guy that used to ride his bike with no shirt on. And
Yeah.
and John Taylor was close with him, and John Taylor was like, "Man, we gotta give my little brother a job because he's a
Yeah.
knucklehead." And Yusuf was like, "Man, I got him." And so I was sweeping, bro, and I didn't understand the impact that would have on me, but it was like just going to a podcast every day. So
Yeah.
just the reading, the barbershop, getting around more mature people, listening to conversations,
Yeah.
understanding how to be a man, and then just, I mean, there's always that part like people can't do it for you. I mean, at an early age, I learned like, hey, this is what I want in life. I knew like times were hard, but I knew they always wouldn't be that way, right? Although
Right.
like I had these things that I was kind of struggling with, I still had big dreams, and I knew in order for me to get to where I needed to go, there's going to be some extra work that I had to put in. So I was just doing things in my own time as well, just
Mhm.
to understand. Because I was a leader even at a young age, and
Yeah.
I knew people looked up to me, and I didn't want to be embarrassed, like, you know what I'm saying. So for me, I was like, I
Yeah.
gotta, like, if things came naturally and easy to others, I would go home and try to figure it out even
Right.
beforehand. Like if I knew like we're have to do, hey, you don't have to read at home, we're gonna read out loud in class tomorrow. I'll go
Yeah.
home like, man, I'll figure out how to sound these words out. I'm gonna read it all beforehand so I'm not embarrassed.
Yeah.
So but it paid off. It paid off for
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely. That's so funny though. I remember how confident you was. You was always a confident kid. I remember you a couple of times like dancing on the corner or like rapping like, and you had that swag, man. At the young age you had that swag, and nobody knew that there was all these little things that was going on in your life that was going to help you become exactly who you are today, which is an ambassador for the people. We are into the. If anybody has a question, Kathy actually asked, "Were you afraid to get help?" I wanted you to go ahead and jump into that. I think
Um,
she's asking if you were afraid when you were kind of dealing with the uh, mental
ye-
warfare inside.
I wouldn't say I was afraid. I just didn't know how. And no one, even when I was like had severe depression, no one said to me, "Hey, here's the steps you need to take." Right.
Mhm.
And so I guess I wasn't necessarily afraid. If someone would have said, "Hey, here's what you need to do," because I'm a firm believer in like self care, even before it was like a popular term, or getting help to be the best version of yourself. And I'm like my natural gift. I'm a learner. Like strength
Yeah.
finders test, one of my top strengths is to be a learner. So I'm always trying to soak knowledge and just learn. And so for me, it was like if someone just would have said, "Hey, here's what you need to do," I would have been receptive to it. I just didn't. You don't know what you don't know. And so for me, as I got older and kind of realized, hey, here's the things that I think would be beneficial for me. It was easy for me to take those steps. But I do understand some folks know, and there's still so many stigmas around mental health and
Mhm.
talking to folks, oh, he's crazy, or and I think I want to do my part in changing that narrative, right? I'm part of a
Yeah.
group right now with some strong brothers, Brandon Irvin, Christian Page, director Corey, Antonio, Dr. Stout, narrative changers, right? Like
Yeah.
how, and I think of like even mental health. How are we going to change the narrative around, especially Black men in
Yeah.
mental health? So we're no longer afraid to ask for help, and if we're not afraid, how do we make sure we as a community have the right tools in place so all people can get to get help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think great one of the things that I was listening to that was a great point is, you know, we all go through something. Obviously Kathy says she suffers from depression and anxiety. Obviously, Kathy, we will pray for you. Um, I never really knew what anxiety was. I dealt with mental illness as well, with my situation at home and whatnot. And I think the one thing, like you were saying, that we have in common when it comes to it is that we just never really talked about it until we were at an age older, when it had already kind of formulated a home inside of our lives, and kind of took over, but we didn't allow it to push us into a negative state. We actually got to a place where we could turn that negative into a positive. And as you see, we're both doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah,
We're out in the community trying to help, give people tools and knowledge to dealing with their situations. So, how is it important for because you were literally like 5, 6 years old when this was going on. I was around the same age. How do
yeah,
we? How important is it for us as men to get to these children before they get to the place where we see them on the streets? We're hearing about these kids shooting up their own classrooms, killing each other. How do we become ambassadors and get into those schools? What have you done? Because I've seen you've been getting into the schools, working extremely hard to try and speak with those children. How can we be more of an ambassador for the children and get it to them before it gets to that point?
yeah, man. I would share a couple things. I think it has to be a collaborative effort. It has to be, it's a variety of resources that and organizations and people that need to one work together to come up with solution. But then
Yeah.
two, a lot of work that I do at the at the national level. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily. I think at the local level, it's some mentorship programs and speaking to youth, but at the national level, it's more so organizations that really focus on family.
Mhm.
And so if so I work with the agency that where I travel, 2 or 3 times a month, and I'm speaking at different organizations, and
Yeah.
it's really just because I think something that we miss. We can't we can share encouraging words with the child and give solution and inspiration to the child, but if we're not doing our best to help mama, the single mom at home, or even single pops at
Thanks.
home, or
Thanks.
the whole that's what we call the whole child,
Yeah.
we're failing the child. And so we have to figure out a way to really get into the home and support the family as well, right? And there's resources, and I think of, like, for example, Casey Family Foundation, incredible organization. I love dearly, man. They work with youth in foster care and youth in kinship care. That was the organization that supported me. They do an incredible work at the local and at the national level. Um,
Mhm.
they did a tremendous work supporting like our family holistically. where they
Mhm.
had resources, right?
Yeah.
So when, if we needed like school clothes, if we needed, I had a caseworker that I could talk to, like all the
Yeah.
time. So it just was like this holistic approach that
Yeah.
helped if we needed resources for like tutoring, right? So they were the ones that probably helped my brother find that tutoring service for me. And I
Yeah.
think what we need to continue to do, find organizations that do that kind of work and really work holistically to support the child.
Absolutely. Good answer. Good answer. So John, what can we expect from you in 2023? I know you said you have some things that you're kind of uh, getting excited for. Is there anything that uh, I mean? I know you have your 30 days. I mean, that's pretty exciting. Um,
Yeah,
I want to get obviously I want to get down with that. So we're gonna connect after we're done so that I can, get on
yeah.
that as well. But what else can we look forward to when it comes to you, Doc?
Man, I love I love following like great artists, great great rappers, comedians. And the thing
Mhm.
about the greats, they always have so much material um, that they're just ready, right? So like movie ideas. So you always hear about these guys like, I mean, Tupac. I mean, he just stopped releasing albums. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How much did he have in the studio, right?
Right. Yeah.
For me, what I want to do, man, in 2023, like this year, there's so many things that I was just doing behind the scenes,
Mhm.
just from book concepts, children's books to just so many things that are curriculums and things that I just continue to toolkits and things that I just want to continue to to write. And so I'm in a season of like when I feel something in my spirit or in my gut, like write it down. Let's start it. I don't know
Mhm.
when it's going to come to pass, but so in 2023, man, I want to continue to do a, a lot of the same stuff.
Mhm.
Thing that I can do to impact and support community and uh, and when I don't have to like show up, right? Doing
Yeah.
things that I can have an impact without because I'm only one person. So really trying to create things that would allow me to be in a space without actually having to be there. And that's like writing, like I said, is difficult for me. So it takes a lot, but it's something that I really want to continue to focus on. I've done a lot this year behind the scenes. I want to continue to do a lot in 2023 behind the scenes and them and just whatever God has for me, just being prepared for that, right? Trying my best to be a great husband, a great father. Um, I was with one of my boys last night, my like a brother to me, Antonio, and
Mhm.
his wife. He needs to be. I don't know if you've had him on here as a guest, but that's a brother that you should have.
Macklemore? Is it
Yeah.
Macklemore?
Yep.
I haven't talked to him yet, but I think I had spoke with him at Jonte's um,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
homegoing,
Yeah.
but we
He
haven't
was.
connected just yet. We're gonna connect though next
Yeah.
year.
But yeah, I would. His wife said something, man, that was so profound. She said, just giving him a compliment. She said, Antonio is. She said the same way everyone sees him in the community, he's the same way at home. He is who he is. Like
Yeah.
this is who he is, and that's just the greatest compliment. And so for me, I that's how I want my wife to talk about me. That's how I want, that's who I want to be. So 2023, man, just striving like to be a man of integrity and character, like being the same person I
Absolutely.
am in home and in the community, right? So that's really it, and just working with great people, continuing to grow as a partner and collaborator in the community to continue to improve, especially even when I travel. Is always Tacoma. Like I want to continue to grow Tacoma. I tweeted something yesterday. We all can win, and that's what I want people to just know. Like there's
Yeah.
enough. There's more than
There's
enough.
enough.
We can all
Absolutely. I like that. I
win.
like
So
I like that. I like that. So there's a couple more things that I'm gonna touch on, and then I'm gonna let you go. I know it's getting to that hour, and I hear the little ones in the background. So
they got
um,
home. Yeah. Yeah.
I got mine in the background as well. So talk to me a little bit about how important family is to you,
Yeah,
and I mean your children and your wife family. Let's talk about them first.
it's everything. I didn't know. I thought I knew my dream. I share a story of like, when I was young, this was my dream. This is what I wanted to do. And
Yeah.
now that dream looks like, man, being a husband and a father. And
Hmm.
that's it. Like
Yeah.
that's the ultimate dream. You could take everything away as long as I have my family. And that for me, I think of like my grandmother, man, who uh, fought so hard to keep the family
Amazing.
together, right? And so
Yeah.
that's my way of like honoring my grandmother.
Mm.
She would say, "Baby, you know you're going to be a great man. You're going to be a great husband." She's not able to see those things, but I want to honor. I want to honor my grandma and her name, the sacrifices that she made for the
Yeah.
family. So, man, it's everything, and
Yeah.
it's really the only thing, right? Like,
Absolutely.
so for
Absolutely.
me, everything else is secondary. If I can get this right, everything else always kind of falls into place,
Mm.
right? So for
Mm.
me, it's like even when I talk about like content creation and creating, it's not necessarily because I want to be popular. I want to, it's more so like what can I do to still make an impact, but still spend as much time as possible with my family.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so shape everything I do, how I move. And so a lot of times, I mean, you're gonna see me at some event with my family,
Yeah.
like they pulling
Yeah.
up with me. They gonna be in a hotel with me. They gonna be on a
Yeah.
flight with me. People ask me all the time. I'm like, hey, I gotta keep working until maybe right now the fee will cover all of our flights and our hotel, and I walk away with a little bit. That's cool. I was like, but one day the fee is just gonna keep growing. I said,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna be comfortable taking my family with me. So this everything.
Absolutely.
They're not.
That's
I'll say this, and I'll say they're not a part of the purpose. They are the purpose, right?
yeah.
If I can't do it with them, I don't want to do it. So
That's amazing. And that's interesting you said that because I was just thinking as you was saying that I was thinking about my friend. I went to my friend's 50th birthday party about a month and a half ago, and he was telling me a story about um, his first gig. He's an excavator. He works, does the big buildings, all that stuff, and he travels all over the country to do it as well. And so he had been offered a certain amount of money to go out of state and do his job because he was that important. And he said, "Well, is there going to be a place for my wife to be at?" And the guy that he was talking to was like, "Well, most of the guys leave their wives at home so that they can have some free time and, be with the guys." And he was like, "Well, if I can't take my wife, then I don't want to do it, because that's his, just like you said, if without that family, it's not as important if my family can't come with me,
yeah,
and so hey, they paid, and so like him and his wife go everywhere together, just like you said. If he has an event that he has to go out of the state, she's right along with him. And I thought that was really interesting. It's like they're
yeah,
everything. So
yeah,
um, another question for you: um, your faith. How important is your faith?
man. It's faith, family, and then everything else, man.
Yeah,
My grandfather, he passed away a couple years ago now. Was a pastor for 50 years, almost on the east side of Tacoma. Taught me a lot of things, and it wasn't until there was a scripture I read, Jeremiah 29:11. Just God knows the plans for us, right?
yeah,
And it has the plan for us. And so for me, reading that, I was 19-year-old, trying to find purpose. And I'm like, man, God has a plan. And that's when it just kind of clicked for me. Like when I just could trust God with the plan. And so for me, man, faith is everything. And faith is me being able to trust God and see and trust God and understand even when I can't see in front of me. Like I know that God has the plan. I know like if I just take this step, if I feel this in my heart, I know that God will work it out. And it really like when you live a life like that, there's no pressure, right? I'm not
yeah,
trying to please people.
yeah,
There's no pressure on me. The pressure is all on God, right?
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
he's
Absolutely.
he's going to do it through me. I just have to trust him. That's what I have to do. So then there's no pressure. So yeah, faith. My faith is everything.
Okay, last thing, and then I'll go ahead and close up shop. And if anybody has a question, go ahead and drop it right now while he is answering this. But when you leave this world, what do you want people to remember about Dr. John Gaines?
Yeah, I would say something I live by is legacy is not what we leave for people, legacy is what we leave in people. And I want people to remember me as a man that planted seeds of hope, love,
Mm,
unity, integrity, and really just strive to be the hands and feet, of the Lord. Yeah,
absolutely, man. That's a good answer. Great answer. Brother, like we could talk. There's so much that I didn't even touch on.
yeah,
And I know we'll probably do this again sometime down the line, but I do appreciate you spending some time with me and us actually getting through it.
yeah,
Last time was a hot mess, but I do appreciate you sharing your story. And if you want to just give people the information where they can follow you, get in contact with you, if they want you to come and speak at one of their events, what's some information where they can get in contact with you?
yeah. The best is just, man, the website. I would say, depending on what you like, what you need, or either like some mentorship or community support, you can go Push for Dreams. Again, that's Push for Dreams, FOR Dreams.org. If you want a keynote or speaking, or coaching, which I stopped coaching for a few years. I'm going to pick that back up in 2023. That's just johnpushgangs.com.
Mm,
So appreciate you. Then, if you need anything else, man, go to my brother David. He knows how to get to me. So thank you,
absolutely,
bro.
absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem, man. Anytime. So, guys, we're gonna go ahead and close up shop. We have reached the hour and past it. Thank you guys so much for listening and following through. Next week, if you guys did not hear, we are doing a secret Christmas gift giveaway concert. Next Saturday, it starts at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you guys are available to support, please come through. We're raising money so that we can support the children in our community that are going to be without. So if you guys would like to be a part of that, please make sure you guys tune in. We will be right here at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with artists from all over the world that are going to sing, share their stories, and we're just going to try and raise money for a good cause. And so if you guys are available, come through next Saturday, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So, on behalf of the Circle, it's your boy DH. I'm out of here. Thanks again, John. We will talk real soon. I need to get that book, obviously. I need to
Yeah,
get caught up. I'm a little behind, but, I always follow you and I always will support you anywhere you go, brother. Keep raising it up. Keep doing the thing.
bro.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah. All right, y'all. We out of here. Y'all take care. We'll see you guys soon. Peace.